you are not losing your mind when a conversation leaves you feeling slightly smaller, slightly guilty, or weirdly eager to prove yourself. That feeling is usually a signal. Someone just moved your behavior without touching your logic, and you did not even see the lever. Quick thing before we go deeper. We are building toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and your subscription genuinely helps us reach more people who actually care about psychology beyond the cliches. And if this hits something you recognize, tap like too. It tells the algorithm this is worth showing to people who need it. Now, let us set the frame, because most people misunderstand what mind games are. You imagine some dramatic manipulator, some obvious villain. But the majority of mind games are not evil. They are automatic. They are the quiet tactics people use to manage anxiety, status, and belonging in real time. You have felt this in meetings, in dating, in family conversations, even in casual friendships. The research angle here is simple. Humans are not primarily truth-seeking in social situations. We are threat managing. We are reputation managing. We are uncertainty reducing. Once you see that, a lot of confusing behavior becomes almost boringly predictable. Here is what I've observed again and again. The most effective mind games do not attack your beliefs. They attack your calibration. They mess with how sure you are allowed to be, how much space you are allowed to take up, what emotions you are allowed to have. Not content, context. And that is why smart people fall for them. Because your intelligence is not the target. Your social nervous system is. Let me show you the first subtle game, and it is everywhere. The calibration hijack. It sounds like this. You are overthinking. It is not that deep. Relax. You are being intense. On the surface, it looks like feedback about your mental process. Here is what is actually happening. They are trying to become the thermostat for the interaction. If they can define what counts as normal, they control what counts as too much, and once they control that, they control you. The mechanism behind this is social reference dependence. Your brain uses other people as measurement devices. In ambiguous situations, you check the room. Am I safe? Am I acceptable? Am I crazy? If someone can make you doubt your own reading of the room, you start outsourcing your internal meter to them. Notice the pattern. They rarely say, "And I disagree with you, and here is why." They say, "Your way of thinking is the problem." It is a category shift. You bring a point, they diagnose your mind, and the second you accept the frame that your mind is malfunctioning, you stop defending the point. You start defending your sanity. Think about this for a second. Have you ever walked into a conversation calm, brought up something real, and then 10 minutes later, you are explaining that you are not mad, you are not insecure, you are not dramatic? Congratulations, you are now on trial for your emotional tone instead of the actual issue. That is the calibration hijack doing its job. Now here is where it gets interesting. The hijack works even when the other person is not consciously manipulating you, because it is a self-soothing strategy for them. If your perception threatens their self-image, it is easier to label you too sensitive than to update their behavior. So the game is not always, "I want to control you." Sometimes it is, "I cannot tolerate what your perception implies about me." Same outcome, different motivation. If you want a concrete tell, watch for speed. Calibration hijacks happen fast. They do not want to debate. They want to install a new default, and once it is installed, everything you say has to pass through it. Hold on to that, because it connects to the second game, and this one is even more common. Forced inference, or what I call the "so you are saying" trap. This is when someone takes your statement and aggressively summarizes it into something you did not say. You say, "I did not like how that meeting went." They respond, So you think everyone is incompetent. You say, I need more consistency. They respond, so you want to control everything. On the surface, it looks like misunderstanding, but the function is strategic. It forces you into a defensive posture where you are correcting their version of you. And while you are busy correcting, they get to choose the emotional framing. They get to make your original point sound extreme, selfish, or irrational. The psychological mechanism is anchoring plus asymmetry. The first interpretation that hits the table becomes an anchor. Even if you reject it, you now have to spend time and cognitive energy pulling the conversation back. And here is the asymmetry. They can distort in one sentence. You need 5 sentences to clarify. That imbalance is power. Notice what happens in groups. One person does forced inference and suddenly everyone is reacting to the distorted version because it is easier. Your nuance is expensive. Their caricature is cheap. And the human brain prefers cheap in social settings because cheap reduces uncertainty. Here is a real-world example you will recognize. You set a boundary. I cannot do this tonight. They reply, wow, okay, so I guess you do not care about me. That is not a misunderstanding. That is a forced inference designed to make your boundary morally suspicious. You are not saying no to an activity anymore. You are saying yes or no to being a good person. If you have ever felt your boundary evaporate while you are explaining yourself, that is why. You are pulled into defending your character, not your schedule. Now stay with me, because the third game is the one that makes reasonable people act irrationally. It is called the debt injection. Debt injection is when someone gives you something small or does something nice, but the real gift is not help. The real gift is obligation. They are not buying closeness. They are buying leverage. This is related to the reciprocity norm, but the subtle part is how people weaponize ambiguity. If I lend you $10 and explicitly say, pay me back, that is clean. No mind game. The game appears when the terms are unclear on purpose. They do you a favor you did not request, or they over-deliver on something, then later they act injured that you did not repay in the exact currency they imagined. Think about this. After everything I have done for you, that sentence is rarely about care. It is about converting history into a weapon. The mechanism is called moral accounting, and your brain is vulnerable to it because social life is basically a running ledger. The problem is that the ledger is not objective. It is narrative. Whoever tells the story of the ledger often wins. If they can define what counts as a contribution and what counts as repayment, they can put you in permanent debt without ever stating an actual agreement. Here is the twist most people miss. Debt injection often targets your identity, not your resources. They want you to see yourself as the kind of person who owes. Once that identity installs, you will self-police. You will offer extra. You will apologize preemptively. You will try to deserve the relationship. And if you are conscientious, empathetic, high agency, you are the perfect target. Not because you are weak, because you take social contracts seriously. You assume good faith, so you pay debts that were never mutually negotiated. Now, if you are noticing a theme, good. Like calibration hijack, forced inference, debt injection. Different tactics, same goal. Control the frame so you do not notice you are being moved. Let me add a fourth game, and this is one you will start seeing everywhere once you know it. I call it the partial confession. A partial confession is when someone admits to a smaller flaw in order to avoid accountability for the larger pattern. It sounds mature, it sounds honest, it disarms you. Yeah, I can be a little blunt sometimes. I know I am not perfect. I guess I have commitment issues. But the confession is carefully chosen. It is abstract, it is vague. It is identity-based, and it is non-falsifiable. They are not acknowledging the specific behavior that harmed you, because specifics create responsibility. They are acknowledging a personality quirk, because quirks invite tolerance. Here is what is actually happening. They are controlling the narrative of their flaw. They are saying, I will criticize myself, but only in a way that makes me seem self-aware. And self-awareness is a social shield. People forgive self-aware people faster, even when the behavior does not change. The mechanism behind this is impression management plus what researchers call moral licensing. When someone signals virtue or insight, observers unconsciously grant them slack. The confession becomes a token they cash in later. You feel mean pressing them because, look, they admitted it, they are working on it, but there is no timeline, no plan, no cost. Notice the pattern here. After a partial confession, the conversation often ends. You feel closure without correction. That is the trap. Closure is not the same as change. Closure is a feeling. Change is a structure. And this is the moment where people usually drop off because they think the solution is just set boundaries or communicate. But if you have ever tried that and it did not work, there is a deeper reason. Here comes the retention surge, because this next part recontextualizes everything. All 4 games are not random. They are different ways of exploiting the same psychological bottleneck. Your brain cannot separate social safety from social truth when you are under relational threat. When a relationship feels at risk, even mildly, your nervous system prioritizes repair over accuracy. You will accept a distorted frame if it means the connection stabilizes. That is not weakness. That is mammal software. In the wild, being accurate and alone is not a win. So the mind trades truth for belonging automatically unless you deliberately override it. So the real question is not, how do I spot mind games? The real question is, what part of me is so allergic to tension that I will buy peace at any intellectual price? Now let us use that to expose the 5th and maybe most invisible game: tension flipping. Tension flipping is when someone makes the conversation about the discomfort of talking instead of the content being talked about. You bring something real and they go, "Can we not do this right now?" Or, "Why do you always have to make things heavy?" Or, "This is exhausting." They are not arguing the point. They are making the existence of the conversation the problem. Mechanism: effective forecasting plus avoidance reinforcement. The brain learns, when I signal discomfort, the other person backs off. And I get relief. That relief reinforces the strategy. Over time, the relationship becomes trained. Truth creates tension, tension creates withdrawal, so truth becomes unsafe. This is where people get confused and start blaming themselves. Maybe I am asking for too much. No, you are asking for reality. The system is designed to punish reality with discomfort, so you stop. And now one more layer, because the most sophisticated players combine these games into sequences. Sequence example: you raise an issue. They tension flip. "Do we have to do this?" You persist. They forced infer. "So you think I'm a terrible person?" You clarify. They calibration hijack. "You are being intense." You back off. They partial confess. "I know I am not perfect." Then they detinject later. "After all I do, you still criticize me." If you have lived that loop, you know how disorienting it is. You walk in with one clean sentence and walk out carrying a stack of emotional liabilities you did not bring in. Now here is the payoff: the unified model. This is the mental framework I want you to keep, because it makes these games easy to spot in real time. There are only 3 currencies in everyday social life: reality, status, and safety. Reality is what is true. Status is who is above or below in the interaction. Safety is whether connection is stable. Most people say they are talking about reality, but they are actually negotiating status and safety. That is the whole trick. Calibration hijack targets reality by controlling the measurement device. Forced inference targets reality by replacing your statement with a more punishable one. Debt injection targets status by making you the debtor. And partial confession targets safety by creating the feeling of repair without the cost of repair. Tension flipping targets safety by making truth feel like threat. So when you feel that familiar confusion, do not ask, "What did I say wrong?" Ask a sharper question. Which currency just got moved and who benefited? Let me show you what I mean in a way you can use immediately. In any conversation, you can run a quick internal diagnostic with 3 prompts. First, did we stay on reality? Meaning, are we still discussing the claim, the behavior, the event, the specific? Or did we slide into tone, personality, intentions, or global identity? Second, did status shift without being named? Did one person become the judge and the other become the defendant? Did someone gain the right to define what is normal, what is too much, and what is acceptable? Third, was safety used as a bargaining chip? Meaning, was connection threatened implicitly? With coldness, withdrawal, disappointment, moral guilt, group humiliation. Anything that says, agree with my frame or pay relational pain. If you can answer those 3 questions in real time, most mind games collapse because they rely on you not noticing the currency exchange. Now, I am not going to give you corny lines to say, but I will give you a principle that is surgically effective. Refuse frame debates, return to specifics. Mind games thrive in the abstract because abstraction is where power hides. If someone says, you are overthinking, you can mentally translate it to, they are challenging my calibration. The return move is not to argue your right to think, it is to ask, which specific part is incorrect? If they cannot name it, the game is exposed. If someone says, so you are saying I am a bad person, the return move is, no, I am saying this specific behavior happened and it had this effect. You are not defending your character, you are pinning reality to the table. If someone uses after everything I have done, the return move is to name terms. What exactly are you asking for, and when did we agree that favor meant this repayment? Watch how often the person gets angry, not because you are wrong, but because you just force the debt into daylight where it has to become a real contract. And if someone tension flips, the return move is internal first. You notice the urge to soothe. You notice your nervous system wanting to buy peace. And you decide, consciously, what you are buying and what it costs you. Because here is the uncomfortable truth that ends the video. Most mind games work because they are trading on a part of you that is desperate to be seen as good. Good is cooperative. Good is easy. Good does not create friction. That identity can become a leash, so I want to close by completing the loop from the first sentence. That feeling you get after certain conversations, that shrink-wrapped guilt, that urge to explain yourself, that sudden doubt about what you clearly perceived, that is not random. It is your mind noticing a frame shift. This week, do not obsess over whether people are manipulating you. That is a distraction. Instead, watch the currency. When reality, status, and safety start getting swapped mid-sentence, you are watching the mind game in real time. And if you can see it while it is happening, you are no longer the piece being moved. You are the one who can finally choose the game. If this changed how you hear people, tell me in the comments which tactic you recognized first, because the one you spot fastest is usually the one that has been used on you the most.